my name is Boris, and in this video I'm going to show you very simple techniques to get you started with making melodies in Ableton. I'll start with showing you some concepts for writing melodies easily, and I'm sure that after this video you'll be able to write melodies yourself. In 3 levels we'll go from making very basic melodies to making something you can hear in this track. I'll play a 30-second fragment. Okay, so this fragment you've just heard comes from our template made with Ableton Live only, and it's called Sound Vibes Progressive House. It's available in the link in the description in case you'd like to check it out. Now in this video, don't get discouraged by any terminology, it's all very basic stuff. Even though some music theory words may sound a little bit strange at first, the concepts I'll show you are all very simple and easy to understand. And if you're looking to learn harmony a little bit more in depth, make sure to check out our courses on writing melodies and chord progressions, which are part of the Harmony bundle on our website. The link is also in the description. Now, before we get started with writing our melodies, let's quickly check out the progression we have in this track and go over the basics of chords. And before we identify all the chords that are playing here, they are very simple by the way, let's start from more basic concepts, some of which may be obvious to you. I'll just make a new clip over here so we can talk about our theory. Now let's start from the very basic distinction. Which chord is minor and which chord is major? Now the easiest way to put it would be that it depends on the semitones used. So a chord that is major would consist of a root note and a third, which is played 4 notes above. So 4 steps from here would be 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. So we have C and E. And the 5th would be played 3 steps above from the E. Let's go 1, 2, 3, and we're over at G. So that's our major chord. Now the same concept applies to the minor chord with one change, that the 3rd is lowered by 1/2 step. So that would be 3 steps from the C, that's D sharp, and then 4 steps from the D sharp, we have the 5th over on G. Now in Ableton Live 11 there's a handy function which makes it easier for you to write chords. Basically, all you need to do is select your scale in here. So I have chosen the C major scale, which is almost all that we are going to be using in this tutorial. And you can press the scale button, which is going to fold your piano roll and leave you only with the keys in your scale. Anything you add over here is going to play in harmony with everything else in your track if you're using only the C major scale. And it's very easy to write chords over here because you can use a very simple rule. Basically, all you need to do to write chords is to skip over one note. This is our C major chord. Now we can also make a chord starting on D. In the same way, we're just skipping over one note, and we can do the same thing for every other step of the scale. In case you're wondering how I am inputting notes with this pencil tool over here, it is activated simply by pressing B. Or you can go over here, so right click and select draw mode. Let me remove these notes. Now hopefully at this point you understand the difference between the C major scale and the C major chord. So the scale is all of the notes that are available to us. We can make all kinds of chords in the C major scale, and the C major chord is only this shape. So C, E, and G. It can be inverted, so it doesn't have to look like this exactly, but the notes that it consists of are all these 3 notes. Let's quickly go to a page from our chord progressions course, and here you will see the diatonic chords of C major. The C major chord is C, E, and G. We can go from here all the way up back to the C major. All of these chords have their names, but you don't have to learn that if you're just starting out. This chart would be useful to you because in the C major scale, as you can see, we don't only have major chords, but we also have minor chords. C would be a major chord, D would be a minor chord, the same for E, and then F and G are major, A is minor, and B is a diminished chord for us. Now with this information, we can pretty much get started with writing chords. But in order to make our chords more interesting, I'm going to introduce two also very basic concepts. First is inversion, and it's super fun. Basically, you can take any note that you have in your chord. We're having the C major chord over here, and you can bump it up by an octave. So if we take the bottom note of a chord and we press Shift and the up arrow, of course selecting it at first, we're going to bump it up an octave and we can create the first inversion. And if we repeat this process, so select the E and bump it up an octave, we create the second inversion. And this creates way more elaborate voicings for us. So this makes our basic chords sound way more interesting. Let's go back. Also, a very handy practice is repeating the bottom note down here, so lowering it by an octave. So we can do this and then take any of our notes and bump it up by an octave to create an inversion. Now let's go back to our chord progression. I'm going to take this clip and duplicate it over here, and let's try to figure out which chords we are playing. Now something we can take a look at the beginning, and that actually tells us what the chords are the bottom notes over here. Root notes have been lowered by an octave, and they tell us what the chords are. So we're playing the C chord, the E chord, the G, back to the C. If we quickly take a look at our cheat sheet from the course, we're going to see that we are going from the tonic, from the C major chord, to E minor, so this gives us a more melancholic feel, and then we're going to G major, and resolving back to the tonic. Okay, but if we didn't have these notes, how would we identify which chords these are? We would have to move some of these notes up or down by an octave. First of all, I can see C, E, and G over here. If we move the C down by an octave, we can see that we are playing the C major shape. Now, there's a D added over here, but that's also a common practice. Basically, what's been done here is that the same melody note was added on top of the progression to make it feel consistent. Now, I'm going to disable it, and the same practice is done over here. We have E, G, and B, and the D note has been added for consistency. Now, here we've got G, B, and D, but the D has been duplicated and lowered by an octave. So we are repeating the fifth below the chord. And here, other than the repeated melody note, we have the C back down here. And if we move it up by an octave, you can see that it is exactly the C major chord. So hopefully by now you can understand how you can take any simple chord progression and decipher exactly which chords are playing. Now, let me copy it once again so that we are back with our elaborate voicings. And I'm going to select all these notes and divide the time by 2 so that we have the chord progression playing a little bit faster. Now in this tutorial I said we are going to make 3 levels of melody, starting from very simple melodies through faster 8-note arpeggios up to level 3, which is going to use something called the Lydian scale.
Just a quick break before we go back to the tutorial. If you find these type of videos helpful, we can highly recommend the PML Academy with over 35 full-length online courses, spreading over topics like writing chords and melodies or arranging your songs to producing entire songs from start to finish. So check out the link in the description to see what's inside the all courses bundle exactly.
Now, some people are going to tell you that writing melodies is all about improvisation and feeling, and whereas this is true to some extent, it is also very helpful to bear in mind the function of notes, and particularly if a certain note creates a sense of tension or safety. Let me quickly create a new MIDI clip over here, and we are still playing the C major scale. I have folded the keys so that we are left only with the steps of our scale. Now, major scales would be described most often as bright, joyful, and stable. But if we selected the C minor scale, that would give us the impression of sadness, melancholy, it would sound a little bit romantic and oppressive. But let's go back to major. Now, in order to create our first melody, let's quickly go over the concept of tension and safety. If we are playing the C chord, and this is our first chord in the progression, we are playing the notes C, E, and G. Let me zoom in over here. So C, E, and G, when playing the C chord, would be described as safe notes. So if we create a melody over the C chord consisting of C, E, and G, it is going to sound simply safe. Now, if we use any of the other notes of the scale, so B, A, F, and D, we can treat these as our tension notes. Maybe the B note would be the only special note over here, because this would be our seventh. So a seventh is basically an extension of our chord. We have the first, so the root, the third, the fifth note of our scale, and the seventh over here. So the B is a very popular note with the C major chord, and with any major or minor chords, the seventh are also very popular. So the A note, F note, and D note over the C chord would introduce tension for us. Now we can use this concept to write our first melody, which is going to be an arpeggio. Basically, an arpeggio is a sequence of notes playing one after another. So if we take a chord, for example, the C7, and we move over the notes so that they are not playing at the same time, we are creating the most basic arpeggio. Now, of course, you can take your chords and arpeggiate them, but we are going to make a melody that is a little bit more adventurous. First of all, make sure you are playing quarter notes over here. So right click and select quarter notes. And I'm going to come up with simple 4 notes that we are going to later repeat. So I am pretty much only using the safe notes other than the B. And the B is the 7th, so that's an extension of our C chord, which also sounds really nice over here. So this is a very safe melody, but it is a bit boring at this point. So what we can do is create a sense of call and response. The first section would be our call, and the second part of our melody would be our response. I'm going to move around some of these notes in order to create this sense. So we have a very basic alternating pattern. Now you can use this concept to write all kinds of basic melodies. Let me quickly show you some examples. So in all of these cases, we are playing something and repeating it, and then I'm creating some variation and repeating it as well. Okay, so that's level 1. Now let's move on to level 2, and we're going to make a faster 8th note arpeggio. Now first of all, let's create a new MIDI clip and adjust the grid to 8 notes, and let's try to come up with a melody. So this is very basic. We are still playing 2 safe notes, and the D is the only tension note over here, so we're alternating between safety and tension. Now an important distinction would be here that the same arpeggio, when played over a different chord, so in this case here we are playing it over E minor, creates a much different sense and feeling than when it's played over C major. Now it also creates a way different feel when played over G, and this is why arpeggios work so well. So the listener gets very familiar with it quickly, but it's not boring because the chords underneath it create a different sense of harmony. There's a different relationship between the arpeggio and the chord progression each time the chord changes. We have an A section over here, but let's make some changes to the B section so we have a call and response. We can also invert some of these patterns over here. So maybe let's try doing this. And when you're making the B section, of course, you need to consider the chords that are playing underneath it. Now let's play some alternatives to this. So here we have an A-B section that is shorter. Also a shorter A and B section, and the same logic is applied to all of the examples. Now for level 3, we are introducing two new concepts. First is the Lydian scale. Let's quickly create a MIDI clip and choose Lydian over here. Bear in mind that the F note over here is going to change to the F sharp. So that is the only difference between the C major and the C Lydian scale. Basically, the F, so the fourth step of the scale, is raised by a semitone. There's a lot of other popular scales in electronic music, but Lydian is one of the most popular ones because it introduces only one change. It causes melodies written in the scale to sound hopeful, dreamy, heavenly, yearning, ethereal, and uplifting. Okay, so that's concept number one. We're going to make a melody that is a little bit more uplifting. The second concept I'd like to introduce is syncopation, or distribution of weak and strong beats. Basically, for this melody, we are not going to play a static rhythm, but we are going to alternate between them. I have chosen 16th notes over here, and in a pattern like this, these would be the weak beats, and these would be the strong beats. So we are going to make a pattern that consists of one strong beat and two weak beats. This would be our pattern of strong beats only. And this is going to be our syncopated rhythmic pattern. Now let's move around the notes. Now, when you're using the C Lydian scale, if you'd like it to feel more ethereal and uplifting, it's crucial to introduce the F sharp note. So you're using a tension note over here, this new note, as well as the G, which is a safe note over here. Okay, let's introduce some change to the B section, and we will have our melody that is in the track you've heard at the beginning of the tutorial. Now, if we quickly change the instruments from our piano to the synths that we're playing in the track, you are going to hear that it is exactly the same. Okay, let's quickly check out some of the other examples. Here we also have a syncopated pattern. And another example. So all that is needed oftentimes is moving just one note, and you are already creating a different sense of harmony for our B section. Okay, so one quick tip at the end. Now, depending on the genre of electronic music you're making, the tone of your actual synths may be more important than the chords and harmonies you are playing. So for example, in techno music, often harmony which does not follow our rules is used, because the melodies are repeated over and over, and it's more important to modify the character of playing synthesizers. But for melodic genres, like for example here we have our melodic house and techno, it's still important to include catchy harmony. So that's why we've made our melody and chord progressions courses, so that you can have a full comprehension of how the chord progressions and melodies are created, and so that you are able to confidently use the techniques in your writing process. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you very much guys for watching. See the links in the description for templates and courses. Click the subscribe button and notification bell for more videos like this. Like, comment, and I will see you in the next ones. Bye.